Welcome everybody to Comics and Cold Ones. I'm your host, JP from All About Comics. This is your one-stop shop, comic book reviews, brews, and all your comic book news. Now we're going to welcome up next to the Cathedral, the Cardinal of Comics, the Bishop of Back Issues, Pope Grimy.
What's up, guys? How's it going?
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We also want to take an opportunity to thank and welcome our guest tonight, Mr. Monte Moore.
That would be me.
Thanks for being on.
So, how was everyone's week so far? Good?
Pretty productive. Burning lots of midnight oil.
Yeah, you're a busy man lately, I've noticed.
Oh, yeah. I often work till between 1 and 3 a.m. in the morning on a lot of nights. So my schedule is more like Batman.
24/7?
Well, you know, sometimes I set an alarm when I work. But then sometimes about late night creativity. And there's even been some studies that say a lot of creatives they sort of get re-energized at night, and that we're not as often like morning people. You know, musicians, a lot of artists I know could probably be hard on those who have kids and that sort of thing because you have so much going in the day. But yeah, a lot of times I'll get a second wind or 10 or 11, 12 o'clock at night.
Well, they said like back in the olden days before like good old alarm clocks and daylight savings time that like people would just like wake up, do whatever they had to do, go to sleep. So like you'd have like different like in old timey days that like stores would be open at like 3 o'clock in the morning because people would like take afternoon naps, and then they would just wake up and like go on their regular routines. They said things didn't start changing until things like daylight saving time came in, and everything turned into a corporate world where it turned into that whatever, like 9 to 5 jobs and stuff like that.
Right.
Well, definitely as an artist, I would imagine, you are kind of the rock star of comic book world.
I don't know about that. I just consider myself more of a journeyman artist. You're just in the trenches doing the job. You know, I was never a overnight sensation. I've been in the industry 25 years now. I've never missed a San Diego Comic-Con as an artist for, well, this would be my 26th appearance. And so you're just kind of, you know, you do the work, but I never was a overnight success. It's sort of like I've worked a little bit on everything from Magic the Gathering and Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings to, you know, now coming back more into comics. And so I'm not really doing hardly any work in gaming unless it's for my own company. And my business partner and I have our first game was a drinking game. And, you know, it's all pinup art and super fun. And so right now I primarily do what I want to do, and that's comic book covers, and that's what I enjoy, and it's kind of booming. But I'm still a little old school because I'm one of those guys more like Joe Jusko and other artists I know that are all one guy, right? So we create the cover as opposed to 3 people, right? You have pencil or ink or colorist. And a lot of times you get 3 people that takes to create a cover. But when you say it's a Monte Moore cover, you know, 99.9% of the time, you know, it's a painting you can hold up and go, that's the cover.
Oh, wow. So you do pencils, inks, and everything.
Well, I'm more of a painter. So, you know, it's sort of like pencils usually then get approved, and then you just go right to a finished illustration. And I'll show one of the Lady Deaths later that is kind of in the beginning stages that's just grayscale, and I haven't added color. And then you can see it compared to the Elvira that's next to it that has all these different layers to it.
So do you remember what your first published comic book would have been?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, I had a guy bring one to me at Denver Comic-Con this weekend, and I was pretty blown away because he had like 3 mint copies. And he was friends with a buddy of mine that was the penciler. And it was called Lords, and we self-published it. And it was originally going to be called Lords of Light. And it was a book, a superhero book, but all of the main characters, the heroes, were descendants of the gods from different pantheons. And they decided that mankind had kind of been screwing up the world long enough, and that they were going to empower one descendant each. And so there would have been one from the Indian mythos and the Newtonian and the Greek and the Roman and the Native American, and they were going to each have a new avatar on Earth. And well, we had 2 or 3 things happen that sort of collapsed the book, unfortunately. The first was Dark Horse Comics came out with an imprint that was called Legend. And that was what we were calling our comic book company. And in the beginning, we didn't think it was a problem. And then they sent us a cease and desist and said, you guys can't be Legend. We had it first, and we had more lawyers. So we were like, and then the book was also supposed to be called The Lords of Light. And apparently there's a writer, I want to say John Zalazny or something, who wrote a novel in the 60s. And it was called The Lord of the Light. And some doofus who contacted us said, oh, I own the rights to that name, and I own the movie rights, and I'm going to make a movie. You guys can't call your comic that. So at the very last minute, even though Diamond had already solicited it, we had to change the title to Lords instead of Lords of Light. And then the third thing, when the Diamond solicitation came out,
don't tell someone else rights to Lords.
Yeah. And they solicited it as a black and white book, and it was fully colored. I airbrushed every single panel by hand. And so our order numbers were really low. And so we just kind of felt like we got a giant kick in the nuts kind of from the industry. And we were working on issue 2 at the time. And it just kind of took the wind out of our sails. So we decided we would freelance and just, at least for the beginning, to get started, we'd work for other people. I was really one of the only ones in comics of the original 4 guys who went on to be a pretty successful illustrator as a freelancer. But I still have a mint box of Lords in my basement, so maybe we'll give away a signed copy at the end of that guy.
Just invoice me already. I need this in my life. It's such an epic story, man. That's crazy. Like just the behind the scenes shit that we don't ever know what goes on with what you guys have to deal with as creators.
Yeah.
We see it in previews. We're like, yeah, that seems interesting. I'll go ahead and order that.
Well, and on top of that, it was 1993, and by sort of late 93, 94, the industry kind of took just a giant crap. And there was so many titles that were coming out there that, I forget how many comic book stores folded that year, but like America lost nearly half of all its comic book stores.
They sure did. I'm a child of that era. So
you're talking to like the prime suspects of like the night.
Yeah, my first comic book I bought in 1993, which would have been Deadpool: The Circle Chase.
Yeah.
So.
And the good and the bad is that that was really as independents were starting to take off. I mean, Image, I don't remember what year Image started, but you kind of had Image, then you had Top Cow, and these were the young Turks, the upstarts, and I was fresh out of art school and hungry to do stuff, but back then it was Marvel or DC, and that was practically it. Now there was other places around, Valiant was around and things like that, but everybody always wants to work for the big 2, and it was hard to get noticed, and self-publishing was practically unheard of. Now you can print 10 comics if you want, but back then we had to print like 2,500.
Like a minimum deal.
Just to make it worthwhile. Otherwise, you're like, hey, you can have this comic book, but it's going to cost you $25 to print, right? So
if you had a long print run, it was going to cost more per book.
Oh, gigantic. And there wasn't even a term print on demand, pod as they call it, pod printing. That didn't exist back then. Everything was offset printing. There was no digital printing. Color copies were out, but a color copy would cost you $2 just for a color copy. One.
I'm going to take a quick moment here and check the chat.
Can we hit the chat right quick?
Go ahead, what?
I was just going to say that we have the great legend with us. We have Trinity. We have the wife who shall not be named. We have Comics Misexplained. What's up, guys? We have Don the Doctor. Cheers, brother. Cheers. We have got TJ Watson. Got reviews from the Batcave.
We have one question for Monty already.
And then we have Jason Smith. We have Brandon Kowinski. We have Escargot. What's up, brother? Damn, this chat's been going on for a while.
Yeah, we're a little behind on that, but that's okay. So one question was, have you ever done anything with Jonah Hex?
Did we lose Monty?
Not sure. He looks frozen in time. He's doing the thinker pose.
It's like frozen like that.
I think so. He's got some Pope internet going on.
Got some Pope face. I do have to say, Comics Misexplained says he likes the Bishop of Back issues. Hopefully we'll get Monty back pretty soon. But until then, the Great Legend says, no, my question is frozen too.
We'll see if he comes back to the land.
We got Nerd Division. We got Pope C. I think I skipped over Mr. Rigmortis. Trying to catch up, guys. We started chatting for a little while. Comics says Popernet. Don't talk about PopeNet. I got that shit on lockdown. And we got Gomez. Gomez is in the house. So I think that's about everybody we got in the chat. I have to say that I did notice that somebody in the chat brought up, God dang it, that He-Man number, Masters of the Universe 18.
That was TJ Watson.
TJ Watson. Yeah, so what's up, guys? Like, I mean, the cover's awesome, but like, what brought this on? Like, why all of a sudden did like this She-Ra thing just explode?
That is a good question. I don't understand. Other than Monty messaged me, they had a power outage, so he's trying to get back on. Man, last week wasn't your power outage jacked up with storms and shit too?
Yeah, man, I had like lightning everywhere. I was surprised. To be honest, I was surprised that like I didn't get cut short a whole lot earlier.
Legend going from like anywhere from 25 to 40 on eBay right now. And it's not even a variant or anything, guys. It's just a regular Stefan Sejic cover. It's beautiful. Hey there.
Okay, so we had a power outage, so I lost my internet for a minute.
It happened to us last week too on with my co-host here. He has having storms and shit. So.
Oh, okay.
But you had the perfect pose because when you froze, you were like this.
Oh, really?
I think your pose was great.
Yeah, we asked a question and it just looked like you were thinking about it.
Yeah, and I said something like, "Hey, can you guys see me?"
So the question was, have you done anything with Jonah Hex?
No. I saw the movie. Does that count?
No. Did you enjoy the movie?
No.
No.
No, it's always disappointing. I'm sure any comic book fan and all this kind of stuff, when something that's beloved is kind of, I don't know, it just turns out to be garbage. And perfect example, Denver Comic Con was over and I had to stay downtown to pick up all my stuff and tear down the booth because I had a 4-booth space and it was huge. So anyway, I watched 2 movies that night. And both of them, I'm an 80s kid, and so both of them were, you know, sort of more about the 80s. The first one was Ready Player One, and I had read the book, so now I'm all excited to see it, all these Easter eggs and stuff. It's a Steven Spielberg movie. It was crap. I thought it was total garbage. And so I was let down, and it left a bad taste in my mouth. So I was like, well, I'm going to watch Rampage, because I used to play that video game all the time in the arcades. Right? Monsters breaking buildings.
Movies.
And I, as much as I am surprised to admit it, I thoroughly enjoyed Rampage. It's like monsters tearing the crap out of Chicago movie. And you know, it's like, okay, well, one was garbage, and that's kind of what Jonah Hex was. I mean, even Megan, being as hot as she is, did not help save Jonah Hex.
That's what Comic Smith Explained says. He said he saw it for Megan.
I saw it for Josh Brolin. What am I joking here? I mean, come on, the dude's a stud.
He was actually pretty awesome as Cable. I thoroughly enjoyed.
I agree.
Yeah, he did an awesome job in that.
I personally, just because I'm a comic book, Deadpool being part of my early youth, I enjoyed the second movie more than the first one. You know, I just me personally, I really enjoyed the hell out of it.
Yeah, I think it's hard to do a follow-up. I think Deadpool, as far as like, and the first kind of, I don't want to say first, but maybe a Marvel movie that's R-rated. I mean, there's been, I don't remember if Hancock was R-rated or not, but
I hope so.
It was really good. And most of the time sequels stink, you know, and I enjoyed the heck out of it. So
we got
it was a pretty high bar. That was probably one of the few movies I bought that year.
So what is your Great Legend wants to know, what is your favorite Western movie of all time or recent time?
Boy, that's.
I don't even watch Westerns, guys. Come on.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with probably, as far as quotability, I think that's my dog right there.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Go around here.
Oh, that's beautiful.
You're saying Wyatt Earp?
I'll be your Huckleberry.
That's right. Tombstone.
Tombstone.
So, you know, I was a big Silverado fan. It came out more in the 80s, but it's just, man, Tombstone's hard to beat. And there's lots of great ones for me growing up. I love Rio Bravo and Big Jake and a lot of the Westerns. But I think if you said, hey, what are you going to put on and what can you quote almost every line? Probably, for me, it's probably Tombstone.
Nice.
That's really true.
And actually, at Denver Comic Con this weekend, my #1 selling Western was the probably because Val Kilmer was there too. But I sold several sets of the Tombstone prints, individuals, and that sort of thing. But it was popular with people, and I had done 3 paintings from Tombstone this last year.
What was the other question? Oh, Comics Miss Explain wants to know what everyone's drinking tonight. I'm trying a new beer called Devil's Backbone.
Oh, there you go.
It's a real ale brewing out of somewhere in Texas, I'm pretty sure. Oh, yeah. So, are you a drinker?
I started with a gin and tonic before we went online, so I'm more of a spirits guy than a beer guy. But I do have to show you, though. I do have a kick-ass fridge here in my studio out here. And
okay, we're getting a total yes.
We're getting a 4. This is badass.
I see a motorcycle.
Oh, wait, is that the amp? Yeah.
I saw that. I was like, is that a motorcycle?
that's the Ducati right there. That's custom painted by me.
Nice.
So there you go. And complete with where's since let's see, I'm trying to figure out where. Let's see if you guys can see this here. Oh, look, it's the Captain Morgan's. So I kind of went with like an Italian race theme, but I put the Captain Morgan logo on there, kind of for me. Yeah,
it's awesome.
So, and then one of my favorite conventions, which is one of the biggest pop culture conventions in the world, is the Lucca Comics and Games in Lucca, Italy. And you can see the logo kind of down here on the tank. And so I painted that on there, and I've been going to that show since '06.
Oh, you're just a traveling man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've been to that show 11 times in 15 years.
11 times, dang.
One other question.
350,000 people at that convention.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
So how was, I have a quick question from the chat. Wants to know if you've done any Vampirella covers or work.
Absolutely. So back, for those fans who remember the Harris Comics days and years, so I did 2 covers. There are 2 back-to-back issues, and I want to say maybe like 250, 251 or something like that. And they're both pencil covers. They're fully realized pencils, so all shaded. And one has Vampirella sitting on a motorcycle, which is actually one of my motorcycles, which is called a VMAX. And then it had Antha in the background. And then the second one also was a cover with both of them. And so I don't know if there's a way to look those up online or bring them on. And then about 3 years ago or 4 years ago, Mile High Comics had me do a special variant that was for a #1 Vampirella when Dynamite came out with it. And it's kind of the Rebel edition now because not Mile High, but the Denver Comic-Con didn't get back to Mile High for the approval. And they just kind of went ahead and ran with it. And then the Comic-Con came back and said, that's too sexy. There's no way you can print that. And Mile High said, too late, already printed. You missed your window to get back to us. And so our convention has this giant blue bear in front of it looking in the window. And so on the cover of mine, it has a little blue teddy bear in her crotch wearing the Denver Comic-Con t-shirt. And they thought that was way too suggestive for a very family-oriented show.
Dude, I gotta find this thing now.
Yeah. So and one of the guys from Mile High told me this last weekend at Denver that the president of the convention came and they had it up on a rack showing it. He said, you got to take that down. That was never approved. And it was like, that's your fault, not ours. Like, this was printed 3 years ago. And I was like, wow, it really is the Rebel edition. They really don't want it being sold at the show. Which is funny because I'm actually on the board of advisors.
Yeah, I saw that on your Facebook thing. I was like, so now we just shot the price up to that book by like tenfold, just so you know.
Right.
Just by talking about it.
Between 20 and 50 bucks per copy. I usually sell for 50 because I have just a couple left.
That would be awesome if we had that much power. It's on our show, so now it's worth $150,000. Put it on eBay now.
I think I know the answer to this, but I skipped you over when it came to drinks. What are you drinking, bud?
I am actually drinking a Texas beer as well.
What?
I am drinking the Shinerbach.
Yeah. After 3 straight weeks of Sam Adams.
Dude, I couldn't make it to the store. Like my wifey was coming home from work, and I'd be like, grab me some beer. And she knows that I like Sam Adams, so she just...
If it's a beer, you have to say, what are y'all drinking?
I know I'm not... I live here, but I'm not real... I'm not real Texan now.
All my cousins are from Dallas, so...
Oh, nice.
I know
I live 30 minutes from Dallas right now. I actually grew up in Texas, but this is my first time back in 22 years living here. So,
so the parole was up and the whole sort of statute of limitations, you could come back.
Yeah. Welcome back.
No.
That porn shop is still on the border there.
that was another guy.
Oh my gosh.
No, when I got to the house, I was actually looking at the beer because I didn't even know it was from Texas. I was like, I guess I need to tell them what kind of beer it is, and I was just like, well, shit, it's from Texas.
So there's a question wanting to know if you have any DC character prints available.
Yeah, I don't do a ton of fan art prints like some artists. That's like a cottage industry and that sort of thing. But you know, after many years of having to say no when people said, hey, do you have a Harley Quinn? Do you have a Batman? You know, and you're like, yeah, I need to do a couple of these pieces because, you know, you also want to make fans happy and you want to make a couple bucks. So maybe I'll post some on my Facebook page. when we're done, or tomorrow as well, because I don't offer them through my website. Normally they're just at shows. But off the top of my head, I have one or two Harley Quinn prints. Like one's a steampunk, and then another one that's the kind of the one from Suicide Squad, the kind of Daddy's Little Monster one. And I've got a Batman piece. I've got a couple Superman. 3 or 4 Wonder Woman. I like Wonder Woman. Cool character. I haven't done any Gal Gadot. They're usually mine are more like classic Wonder Woman. And then I have some Marvel ones as well, like Gwen Stacy, and I have a Spider Gwen. Things like that.
So I had a comment earlier I kind of missed. I apologize. Escargot 80. He's one of our viewers from Turkey.
Oh wow!
He's up at 4 a.m. to watch this show at his time.
Woo!
So he wanted to tell you that he, loves your work and that he's really excited for the Elvira cover to come out.
Oh, right on. Appreciate that.
And there was, I think there was something else, maybe the Lady Death one too. But yeah. So for me, I'm just going to kind of talk a little bit. I discovered your Instagram and everything because of Lady Death, and I saw the ad for the Denver Comic Con and your exclusive cover that you had out there. I think it was limited to what, 99 or something like that. Super limited book, if I'm not mistaken.
They had online orders, the first 65 or whatever, they sold in like 4 minutes. And then really by the next morning, the other 35, 40 copies they had at the show were gone. So Coffin Comics has really got it down well when it comes to, giving the fans what they want, but keeping stuff exclusive and not, going overboard on the, amount of numbers and stuff. So it keeps the collectability high. And I think that Brian and Fran, they're just super savvy when it comes to staying directly in touch with the fans. They've, the Kickstarters, they've got it down pat. And as a guy who actually most other people in the industry look to me when it comes to like marketing and business, and I look to them and kind of go, man, you got some shit I need to learn from.
Well, I mean, I have supported probably the last 3 of their Kickstarters personally. So, I mean, I have, it all started with because, like, I was a fan of Colette Turner, for example. She did a cover for one of their Kickstarters. Of course, Sora Sung did a cover, all these things. And I'm like, but as far as, like, you just pay attention to what he does with Kickstarter, and he has it figured out. He has got a game, and it works well, and it's fun to see how he does his business for something that is truly independent. So
the thing is, you've taken the distribution model and turned it on its ear and said, all right, Diamond, all right, comic book stores, we don't necessarily have to go directly through you if you're going to make us jump through all these hoops and take sometimes the lion's share of it. And I would say one of the biggest things that I learned from them, and I haven't sort of applied it yet, but they're doing stuff more regularly. And I kind of felt for a while that I wasn't doing a Kickstarter, but about every 1.5 years, 2 years, because I didn't want to reach out too much and say, hey, I want to do this new product, give me money, pre-buy the product. But they're actually taking the exact opposite. They're actually saying, well, once a quarter, we're going to come to you once a quarter, and we're going to let you participate and help fund these projects. And so it's the opposite of saying, hey, I'm not going to do this too often, and saying, no. You need regularity. It'd be like a sports team only playing a game every couple of years. You're like, yeah, I'm going to lose interest, as opposed to saying, we're going to show you what we're doing, on a regular basis. So that's something to pay attention to. I learned from that. So.
Someone asked, how do I find the Denver Comic Con Vampirella book?
I bet they have them on the Mile High site. If you go to Mile High Comics, because he said he had them available. So do a search for if they have ever had exclusives, or just do a search for Monte Moore Vampirella. And if you Google online, you'll probably get some of the first 2 covers that were pencil ones. But once you see the one where she's sitting in kind of a throne and has a torch on each side and the little teddy bear in her crotch, you'll know that's the one.
That's when you know you can beat her.
Maybe I would have grabbed one if I was more prepared, but I just tore down from the show, so everything's kind of in boxes.
When I saw pictures of your booth in Denver, and my God, that was like a monstrosity of a booth. It was pretty epic, man. I'm not gonna lie. I'm assuming that's your home show, right?
Yeah, I go big or go home. So it's also a more affordable show. So for example, that was 4 booths, and my booth at San Diego Con, which I've been going for 26 years, and I have a 2 booth spot right inside the illustrators area. It costs twice as much money for half as much space.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal especially for you.
Yeah, a booth basically is anywhere at San Diego between 2,500 and maybe even 3,500 per booth, right? That's a lot. You got to sell a lot of art to, break even and make that work. And that's why you're starting to see artists leave the show. I mean, even Donato Giancolo is probably one of the best painters in the world. And he's like, I'm done. I'm out.
I always thought that was a strange kind of like thing to get into, because like conventions, the convention is going to make money from the fans coming to the shows anyway. So I always thought it was weird to charge like high prices for tables for people we want to come see and support as fans.
Yeah, but it's, everything's supply and demand. And because that show's been around one of the longest, kind of established as the, kind of king. And now because all of Hollywood goes there, it just drives that demand. And the bottom line is that an artist like me or anybody, it doesn't matter if it's J. Scott Campbell, if they say, hey, I'm not going to come unless you, make the rates lower, they're going to say, bye-bye. We have a 400-person waiting list that's 10 years long of people who will step in and say, I'll take your spot and I'll sell stuff to the fans. So it's adapt or die.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's just weird because I remember seeing cons having comic book artists and like your local artists, and then every once in a while you'd see a celebrity, and then now it's just kind of like
the opposite. So my hope is that we might see a little bit of a swing, and you'll see some small shows. Like we have some shows south of me here at Colorado Springs, and they're just kind of going old school, and they're not doing a bunch of media guests, or maybe they're doing a couple, but they're trying to make the focus comic book artists and vendors and actual get some golden age, get some silver age retailers, get people bringing the product down, and don't make it as much of a pop culture media show. But right now, for the big shows, doesn't matter if it's Denver, Salt Lake City, New York, Chicago, those media guests are what people want to see. I was at Motor City and I did the VIP artwork for both Arrow and Xena. And, I got to meet both of the stars, and it was like a big thing for the weekend. But, I've been in the industry 25 years, and I didn't have 400 people lined up to see me. That's the way of the world.
Right.
Yeah.
So
we got another question for you.
Sure.
Nerd Division says, hi, Monty. I remember seeing your cover art for Zombie Tramp years ago. He said, my question is, are you okay doing risque variants for any comics, or does that go against your morals and values?
No, I'm more known for doing the sexier characters. And it's kind of funny because as an artist, I never set out to do that. But the very first freelance job I ever got in 96, I think, was for Helena by Lightning Comics, a little independent. And it was kind of when the Bad Girl era kind of kicked in, and like you had Ballistic Studio.
I was like, he's like, hell yeah.
And the thing is I kind of, without seeking out, because I could draw women well, I got known for that, but it was never a goal. Now, that being said, I love pinup art. And even like over here, here's an example. Like I have a little bit of Western stuff on the wall, but there's also like a nice 1940s, this is a Vargas print here that was out of the original Esquire. So I love like 40s, pinup style art. And so I don't have a problem with that. But even a couple of years ago when I was doing covers for Grim Fairy Tales and then Naughty and Nice, the covers were getting more and more risque. And so there was definitely maybe half a dozen topless variants. that were for that title. And then I started doing more work for Brian over at Coffin, and then a couple of other independents, and I kind of enjoyed that character more. So at the moment, that's the one I kind of stuck with. And so when you're doing stuff that's like Lady Death, or it's a variant that's kind of running right on that edge, you're trying to find that happy space between super sexy and still also classy enough that you're not trashing up the character. So I would say most of my clients expect, if it's a female character, they want it to be strong, powerful, and sexy. Because the thing is sex sells, and it doesn't matter whether the artist is a male or a female. Most of your buyers, I'm sure 80 to 90% are still men. And, you know, I can see the art in the background, you know, back there, and, you know, it's Harley Quinn, it's sexy art, it's pinup art, and, you know, and it's still a mainstay in the industry. I mean, Elvira, Lady Death, these are what I'm working on.
The thing I have found, these behind me, for example, these are my wife's.
Right.
You know, I mean, honestly, so I have some other friends, and you know, we all collect stuff. And don't get me wrong, I do my Lady Death, I do whatever the stuff I like. But my friends and their wives, you know, their wives collect stuff like this. One of my friends' wife, their whole wall is risque art, you know, topless, what have you. And that's her choice, and because she found it, you know, because I think it's risque, but it's not all of it is like pinup art is very classy, very classic. You know, it's beautiful, it's sexy, but it's also not pornography, I guess, you know. So
I got a fun story to tell you about that on that subject, and it's about Playboy. And since we have a nice forum here, I'm going to relay the story because a lot of people don't know it. So 15 years ago, well, yeah, about 15 years ago, there was a licensee for Playboy called 1220 Art. And I saw an ad of theirs in the magazine, and it was a limited edition, you know, giclée lithograph from Olivia, you know, stunning. And they're like, we have this line of prints called Uniquely Playmates. And so I looked up the internet access on my old router dialer, you know, and I sent one image. I had done a pinup image of a beautiful mermaid, no seashells on top, called Sensatiable, and it was of a playmate named Susie Simpson. And I said, here's who I am, here's my career. You know, if you're interested in my art, let me know. A couple weeks go by, I don't think anything of it. No, you never hardly get responses from this. And I got a response back from them. And they said, wow, we were really taken by your art, and we really like this piece. And, you know, we want to maybe put you forward to Playboy to do edition 4. And the second edition, I think, was Michael Mobius, and the third one was Walter Girato, Italians. And they said, oh, we've had people mail us in person leather-bound portfolios of their original artwork from all over the world, you know, trying to get them as a client. And here I had sent this one low-res, you know, JPEG. But it was enough that they could kind of see the art. And so they put my name forward to Playboy, and Playboy came back to him and said, nah, we want you to choose somebody else. This guy's young in his career. He's not as established. We want you to choose somebody else. And I had the opportunity to meet them, the licensee, at San Diego, and they came down from LA to meet me, and we had dinner, and they said, you know what? You're our guy. We're going to stick to our guns. We're going to go back to playing.
Wow.
Give this guy a chance. He's going to knock it out of the park. He's assured us it's going to be awesome. And I said, look, if you don't like it, don't pay me. Like, the artwork should speak for itself. And they said, okay, well, and it's funny that you sent us that image of the mermaid, because the playmate that Playboy has selected is Susie Simpson, the one image that I had sent them. And so I did the art. It's her. She's pouring milk out of a kind of an old style basin over her back. And I proposed making her a pencil drawing, and only where the fluid is in color. And the cool part is I heard back from them once I finished the art, and they relayed a story that Playboy told them, and they said, you know what? This is the only image that's gone all the way from the lowest person in marketing up the food chain to Hef, then to Hef's daughter, not a single change. Olivia's was sent back 3 times. Still a beautiful image when it was done. And they said, you know what? It's perfect just the way it is. You were right. You know, knocked it out of the park. Only one with no changes. And so the artwork spoke for itself. It was classy. It's what they wanted, and they loved it. And so to me, they were taking a chance on the art, and it didn't matter the name. You know, it's like, don't buy it because of the name. Buy it because you like the art and the image. And unfortunately, that company folded after a while, and so there was never another one done. So it actually kept it pretty exclusive that there was only 4 artists in the world that ever did a limited edition print for Playboy.
That is a badass story.
It's pretty damn cool.
Cold ones, yes. Get the fucking jackpot.
And the thing is, you know, like fan art prints and things like that, they typically sell for $20 to $40 or whatever. But to get a print, a big sheet clay of the piece I did, you know, it was $400 for a print. You know, and they only made
how old were you when you did this Playboy thing?
30, 31. You know, somewhere in there. You know, most
your high school friends were calling like, man, did you get an invite to the mansion?
So here's the thing: is I should have taken advantage of that, just because it would have been a fun experience. That technically, if I had gone out there and I showed up and I said, "Hey, I'm a licensed Playboy artist. You know, I'd like a tour or whatever like that," they probably would have accommodated. But I never did, and it would have been just a cool experience just to check it out.
Oh yeah, I mean, like, dude, you have to.
Like a tour of Kendra Wilkinson's room, if that's cool. You know, no big deal.
Well, and I worked with several different Playmates over the years doing prints and things, and I would kind of co-op with them where if I did a print run and they signed some prints for me, I'd send them like half the print run. And I'd just say, hey, if you do appearances or you do glamour cons and things like that, you know, here's signed prints, and they'd send some back to me. And, it just worked out well because it was good cross promotion. And it was kind of at the beginning of the internet really being useful for marketing, because this was more like early 2000s. Like, things were going, but we didn't have Facebook and live chat and Instaslam and all these, millions of followers and stuff.
So do you have a European tour as far as commissions go I know you said Lucca, you said Italy, right?
Yep. And I'm trying to think if I went 2 years in a row. So there's, in the early 2000s, because I was doing a lot of gaming art for traditional tabletop games, there's a big show in Essen, Germany called Spiel, which means game. And so I went to that half a dozen times with Larry Elmore, who has become a good personal friend of mine. And he's, probably one of the most well-known Dragon D&D artists. He did Dragonlance covers and all that stuff. So in the industry, he's a legend. Like, I was a young Turk and I would be next to him and he'd have, people 5 deep lined up. And so he's a great role model to learn from and be humble and all that. And we did that show probably half a dozen times. And then once I started going to Italy, because it also has comics where Spiel doesn't, well, they have a little bit. I just found more of a home there, and the fans and the staff that put it on, you just kind of become family. And so I was a guest in 06 and then a guest again in 08. And then I just started going back as an exhibitor because I love it. And there's another really great show that I've also been to 3 or 4 times called FactsCon, FACTAS, in Ghent, Belgium, just about 45 minutes outside of Brussels. And so whenever possible, I try to do those 2 shows back to back because I can do 2 shows on 1 ticket. But I've never been yet to like the big Paris Expo or anything like that yet. I'd like to.
We're going to have to get you over to Istanbul so you can go see our friend Escargot.
Well, the conventions are all over.
I got a place to crash.
Well, last year I did. I went to Edinburgh Comic-Con in Scotland, and then I went over to Italy, and I did a smaller one called Ludi Comics that's in Empoli, Italy. And these are just really fun shows. They're less commercial than the U.S. shows, and they're more cultural. So I was doing art demonstrations, and it's kind of more about the experience. Even the show called Con Comics, which is down in Guadalajara, and I've been there about 5 times. They're just more cultural. They're really focused on the fans, and it's, you know, even though media guests are cool, it's not the focus. Whereas a lot of the U.S. shows, it's, you know, who's the big name star from whatever the, you know, Avengers movie of the week is.
Right. Yeah, for me, so I went out to Seattle earlier this year to Emerald City Comic Con.
Yep, I went the last 2 years, but I couldn't go this year. I had to cancel because I was doing an almost 3-month art show in Arizona.
Oh, wow. That's good for you then.
Yep, that's what all the Western art's from.
Okay. Oh, it was my first convention since I was probably 16.
Oh.
You know? So,
big difference.
Yeah. Like, my first convention would have been in Arlington, Texas. I was like 16 years old, and I went to meet Clive Barker, you know, and he still had glasses and was just painting Hellraiser. So,
yep.
So my experience was completely different. But I spent 90% of my time in Artist Alley because
it's a good Artist Alley, and I was there the previous 2 years. It's a well-run show, and they have killer food in Seattle. It's a good place to go do a convention.
Yeah, I spent all my time in the international district, so I ate lots of different foods for sure.
It's that area. It kind of reminds me of a couple other shows where you don't need a car. It's right downtown. You can walk to get everything. You know, one of the things that makes me real proud about our show in here in Denver is, as far as I know, it's probably the biggest Artist Alley in the world because we had 400 tables. Yeah. And I mean, San Diego Con, for example, is about 130.
Oh, wow.
And so Denver keeps the cost low. And even though not everybody still gets in because they still might get 1,000 or 2,000 applications, they try to stay very artist focused. So you still get a lot of emerging artists who are getting their first chance to do a show, you know, if they're ready, and you know, I applaud them for that. And it would suck having to jury people in, you know, but it's the world we live in, because even the previous year at Emerald City, I didn't get in. So I was there the previous 2 years, and I'm sure that the folks who were making the decisions, like, okay, well, you know, Monty, we didn't pick you this year, and I got in the following year, but, you know, they got to spread it around. So it's not like it always goes to the most established guy. So good for them for giving other people a chance and saying, hey, Monty, we're going to give your spot over here to, you know, Fred or Tiffany or whoever, and, you know, see if they've got what it takes. So it's, you know, I empathize.
Well, I will make it my goal, as I did. So this year has been like my ultimate year in comics for me, to be honest with you. So, you know, I did the Emerald City, I did the Dallas Fan Expo. You know, I've just been all over the place.
Are those both Reed shows? Does Reed put on Fan Expo as well?
I'm not sure, honestly. I'm sure someone in the chat can probably answer that question. I'm just all about, like, who do I get to see? You know?
Yeah, but obviously, if you're hanging out in Artist Alley most of the time, you know, you're there about art and comics, and you're not spending, you know, 6 hours over, or, you know, at San Diego, I'm rolling into town, and people are already sleeping on the sidewalk just to get into Hall H to see a Walking Dead panel that's, you know, 27 hours away. It's like, okay, if that's your thing, that's your thing. You know?
That's not my thing at all. I'm all about you guys. That's why we do what we do on this show. You know, we're trying to get the artists connected with the creators connected with other fans with like-minded, you know. So.
I think it's about time we gave away something. I think we're at least an hour in, right?
Yeah, we're almost at an hour in. So if you want to give away something, now is the time to give away stuff.
Time to give away shit.
I'm trying to think. All right, you guys talk amongst yourselves. Let me go grab some swag.
Okay.
And I got to go root around in my trade show stuff for a minute, okay?
Number one.
Up to the chat.
So I'm going to ask, there was a question for me. I want to take the opportunity quick. Pope Cerebus had asked me about Kickstarters, and if I found that, I guess if I got value in it. I'm going to show you something. I'm going to grab it really quick. You go ahead and talk. I just got a new Kickstarter in 2 days ago, so I'll be right back.
Get the fuck off my show. This is the Pope G show. It's all about me, guys. It's all about me. All right.
All about comics, asshole.
And beer.
and beer.
I'm actually surprised your wife didn't jump in your chair. She's like, "This is my chance."
She could if it was accessible, but it's really not. She'd have to climb the wall like Spider-Man to get over here.
I probably fell on my face.
I would have paid to see that.
Rude.
I would have sent you some art, Germ.
All right, so what do you got going on in the chat there, bro?
Oh no, I was too busy trying to take over the show that I didn't even go to the chat.
Oh. Okay, I have one question I have to ask Monty when he gets back. You're welcome, Escargot 80. What's up? What up? What up? What up? So Pope Cerebus the First. Here we go. So this week I got in the Penny for Your Soul. So basically, I was going after. This is Ula Moss's first cover. Like normally she's a colorist for J. Scott Campbell or people from like Zenoscope. Like Paul Green, for example, has used her a lot as a colorist. But this is her first actual ever full-on cover. This is her work. Ula Moss right here. So I supported this Kickstarter. Just it's beautiful, and I wanted to. I did it for her, A, and B, because I really wanted. I mean, this is talk about collectability. I think there's only like maybe 100 of these that were even printed. So, this A, she's a well-known colorist in the industry, and B, it's her first ever full-on. This is her work, top to bottom. So with that, you kind of got some trading cards and stuff, and I don't really care about the trading cards so much. They're kind of cool little throw-ins. When you hit certain goals, they send you a bunch of different little swag things.
Cool stuff.
Nice. I worked on that. I worked on Penny for Your Soul for Tom Hutchinson.
You have, or you are, or you did?
10 years ago, maybe. It was a pretty new. I just did one, but it was a super saucy cover. The characters are the one girl's laying down on a sushi bar, and there's just some cleverly placed octopus. So, and that's probably a pretty hard cover to find because I think that was a direct variant for Will's Bargains.
So here's what I learned. So,
Pope Service is asking, did you get your premiums for supporting Kickstarter campaign?
Yes. I have gotten everything that I was promised and more. Like I said, I upgraded my pledge to make sure I got this covered. You guys will see more of this in the future with Lady Death, La Muerta, and whatnot. But they kind of do these different things with Kickstarter. They just give you some extra cool stuff for hitting the goals or what have you. So anyways, so before we go into this contest, I have one quick question. Do you know of any Dutch artists?
Yeah. Romano Molinar is a badass. He and I did a cover 15, 18 years ago for More Than Mortal, which is a title that's not around anymore, but he was actually just getting started in the industry, and he did the interiors, and I did a wraparound cover for it. But he's, I see him every year at the VaxCon, and man, that guy can crank out some awesome artwork. Romano Molinar.
I have to check him out. So
Yeah.
me, I'm an artist collector, if you will. So like everyone here knows of my desire to collect everything Natalie Sanders. She did some stuff for BDI with Tom Hutchinson as well and whatnot. And most of her early covers were like con exclusive type covers. So some of them got super pricey. So I know exactly what you mean when you say that some of those are going to be really hard to find because those smaller print runs 10, 15 years ago, who knows where they're at, right?
Well, and the thing is everything's kind of subjective. Like, so for example, I have a Lord's #1 here now. There's probably nobody in the country that's selling one of these. So if I decided to put a $100 price tag on it, I could, right? Because me and basically my buddies who, self-publish this, it's up to us to decide what something's worth. So it doesn't really matter, if I think it's worth $50, $20, $200. If it's worth 200 and somebody decides to pay me 200 for it, then it's worth 200. So this book right here is the very first published work of all four of my friends and I. Gabe Hernandez, his brother Chachi was the inker. I was the colorist. It's the only book I've ever just colored. And actually, I'm going to open it up. And you can see the interior, which, you know, it's going to have that retro kind of look. There was no digital coloring back then, right? So every single panel was airbrushed by hand. And I airbrushed the cover. And let me tell you, that's a ton of work. And, you know, it was all kind of what they call freehand airbrushing. You're not masking anything off. So that's, you know, that's 1993 era right there, you know. And so we're gonna, I don't know how you guys do the giveaways, but I'm gonna sign this book, and we're gonna give it away. 1993, the only published work of Legend Comics.
Awesome. And I don't know if you can see this or not. Since I have yet to figure out how to do split screens on my computer. If you guys can see this without a glare, here's
Oh no, I'm looking at it on the YouTube site.
For your soul cover, yeah.
it looks awesome with the illuminated light behind it, like she's in the surgery.
Oh yeah, blurring it out like on CSI.
You just use the black light on that scene.
Right. Yeah, here's the difference between you know, 25 years of practice. So here's 1993, and there's 2007.
Damn. That's your book, your art book?
I have 3 different ones here we're going to give away. So this is this is kind of like my 8th art book. And this one was 7. And then this was around, I think this was the 4th or 5th one at the time. This was published by another publisher, Paper Tiger. And they've done a lot of really famous art books over the year. They're out of Europe. And this was also a hardcover at the time. Yeah, so we got a couple different art books we're going to give away. But first, however you want to give away the Lord's comic, we can give that away, and then you just tell me where to send it.
How do you want to do it? Do you want to do trivia tonight? I mean, I was going to use a trivia question, but I wasn't expecting you to break out the Lord's book. I was going to use the question, what is Monty's first published work? But then you're holding it there. So
dig deeper now.
How about we can go to the chat and say, what was your favorite Western?
That means they had to have been paying attention.
Exactly. That's how we do things. We're like fucking high school here.
When you write in class, pay attention.
All right. Well, there it is.
Oh, it's open one.
Oh, Escargot got it right out the gate.
Oh.
Right on.
Escargot shooting from the hip.
All right. I don't expect to see that on eBay.
No, he doesn't sell anything. So typically what you can do, well, I'll message you off the show, but he won another prize from Sora last time. So since he lives in Turkey, I'll pay the shipping costs because it gets crazy over there. So I'll just have you send it to me or whatever, and we'll package it with his other stuff and send it away.
Well, it'll make it there, I'm sure.
You don't even know me, and you know me. Sorry.
Well, then I'll make sure to send 2.
What's that?
I said if that's the case, I'll make sure to send 2.
There we go. What's you win, by the way? The Tombstone book? I mean, not the Tombstone book. What the hell? That was a question. Sorry.
You win the book.
I've only had 2 beers.
The first appearance of Monte Moore, the first published work.
Awesome.
1993. I bet you won't find one of those suckers on eBay.
That is awesome.
That's really badass. Thank you for doing a giveaway, man. That's badass.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right, so what do you want to give away tonight, Pope?
I got a small stack of books. I have no idea how I want to give them away, but I got Venomized #4. Got a nice cover. I got the Wolverine Generations. Don't get too excited, but this is a reprint of the Silver Surfer #3.
Oh, cool.
I'm super excited.
Got X-Men #8.
I
The
think I have
first,
the swag to show you. Speaking of Silver Surfer, hold on.
this is the first appearance of Belladonna. And then I got this X-Men Unlimited #1. And it is signed by Mark Casella.
So this is just to tie in with the Silver Surfer. This is a cool piece of swag that I got probably 20 years ago at San Diego Comic-Con, and it's signed by Boris Vallejo, and he dedicated it to me. And just a nice Silver Surfer piece that's framed and on the wall here in the studio.
Nice.
That's freaking sweet.
I was thinking that Clint Eastwood piece would be great on my wall.
Yeah, you know what? For $7,000, we can make that happen.
Yes.
No.
The wife- What's the old saying? Happy wife, happy life? I think not.
That's more like Dead Man Walking.
Yeah, no shit. So, what was I gonna ask you? So, do you currently read anything, like personally, while he's thinking about what he wants to give away?
Tell you what I'm doing today.
A lot of time to read because I probably work 50 to 70 hours a week, and I love the job. So a lot of times what I find that I do now is books on tape and just play an audio book. So that's how, I recently, this last year, I did Ready Player One. And when I was in the Western phase, actually, I did several historical novels on the American Indian, kind of the good and the bad and all the stuff happened. So some of them were called the Great Courses, and they were really just a thorough history of, the Native American all the way through. And then there was sort of Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, and there's one that was a Pulitzer Prize winning one. And so I was kind of making my focus that. And then I did a couple of Longmire books recently, if you guys know the TV show.
Heck yeah.
And I grew up on a cattle ranch in Idaho, a 30,000 acre ranch. And so I just dig the Longmire character. So if I'm working on something and I want to get in the mindset, even though that's kind of more of a modern Western, I like the books on tape because they really make the time go fast. So if I sit down and say I'm working for 3-4 hours, I'm not getting up, then I'll usually put on a book or a movie in the background. But I haven't been doing very much traditional reading as opposed to listening to stuff.
That's cool.
No comic books in your repertoire of reading?
My favorite ones that I read, which were more of, like 90s projects and things like that. I loved The Nail. I really enjoyed Kingdom Come. There were some great stories back then, and obviously Fully Painted stuff from Alex Ross that really got my fire going because, here he was, painting these entire things, and every page looked like it, was a piece of fine art. But in the last many years, I haven't really bought, collected, or read much. I know it sounds pathetic, but I don't know what's worse, doing that or having worked on Magic and yet never having played the game. Well,
I mean, I've never played Magic, but I mean, I'll be the first one to tell you that I'll stop by the card section at any Walmart and look at the fucking, like, I'm a sucker for elves, man. I love elves, dark elves. It doesn't matter. I just love elves. I'm like, yeah, I was an elf in my last life, so, I'll just look at it. And I'm like, I've never opened a pack in my life, but I love to look at them.
Well, and it's an art-centric game. I mean, there's people who don't play it at all, and they collect and spend thousands and thousands on the original art from the game just because they like it. So,
Hours playing that game.
well, and I was a little bit older, so I was a big D&D nerd when I was a kid. So, my art heroes growing up were the 4 or 5 main guys from TSR: Larry Elmore, Clyde Caldwell, Keith Parkinson, all of these kind of guys. And so to then get to work on 3rd edition D&D And I can remember when I got my first assignment from Wizards of the Coast for that, and it was like, you're going to paint the orc, troll, the wyvern, you know, some of these like mainstays of everybody fights those. And I was like, holy shit, I'm getting to actually paint the most iconic stuff. And it was just awesome. I'm sure if I had that original art, I could probably move the decimal place over for what I sold it for.
No doubt.
I mean, that's one of those things, crazy things. Like people are like, oh, those are just magic cards, but like you know, like some of this, the artwork on it is fucking phenomenal.
Yeah,
those like
traditionally anymore, and that's kind of the sad part. That one of the reasons why I don't do a lot of gaming art is they've really just switched to. They won't tell you they have a preference for digital art, but you can just see it, you know. And it's based on speed, and they also don't pay what they used to either. So the thing is if somebody comes to me and they say, "Hey, we want you to do some card art, and you know, we want to give you 10 images, and here's what we're going to pay you," you're like, "Wait a minute, that's like lunch money kind of rates," and you're trying to devalue the illustrator, saying, "Yeah, but these digital guys, they can do 5 in a day," and you're like, "Yeah, I can do 1 in 5 days." It's an oil painting, you know. If you're talking about painting, you know, something like this, you know, that takes some friggin' effort. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And that's a painting that's in progress. That's a tribute to the Death Dealer. And
that was my first thought was Franzetta there.
Yep.
That's awesome. So I know Pope was going to give away some shit, but I missed something in the chat here. I gotta said Monte, your pencil sketch image would hold on 1 second. Sorry, it's like a drunk person talking here already. Your self portrait penciled self portrait is incredible.
Oh, if it's the one that they're referring to, because sometimes I use it as my avatar on, or my portrait picture on Facebook. I was doing covers for Moonstone Publishing, which is a small indie, and they have like the Phantom, but they were publishing Kolchak the Night Stalker, and the publisher said, "Hey man, we want to do like a little bio of you in the back. Can you send me a portrait?" And so I was going to send him a picture or whatever. He said, "Yeah, you know, everybody's kind of like doing a drawing instead. Do you have a drawing?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't." And so I kind of cranked that one out. And I kind of have a crazy look on my face, and there's an airbrush coming around the back of my head, and it's kind of like spilling paint and almost like it's attacking me. And so in my art book, actually, there might even be a picture of it. My caption for that piece, there's Vampy. My caption for that piece was, "Sometimes an artist fights to create art, and sometimes it fights back."
That's pretty accurate, I would say.
Maybe it's not in this book. I get some really early stuff in here. I'm going to show you guys an crazy early work. Monte Moore at 13. All right, here we go. Right? So there's somebody, you know, is probably drawing off of like a lead figure. I mean, the guy has no knees, he has no feet.
Fucking He-Man right there.
Yeah, big old meat hook, you know, hands. But you know, that's Monte Moore at 13. And here's the caption, and this is the reason why I showed it. I said, "I showed this drawing what I did when I was age 13 as a not-so-fine example of my childhood work. It illustrates my point that being an artist is often the progression of learned and applied skills, and we have to acknowledge where we came from." So when people think that when they see the skills and you're creating all this new, you know, maybe amazing artwork that you did it your whole life, and you go, "No. I was just about like any other average kid. I just stuck with it." Here's kind of a fun thing. This was my first paid gig, and this was for the Australian Outback collection. Those are fashion drawings, and they were for coats. And the fee that I got paid to do that paid for my first semester of college.
Damn.
Yeah, I did like so there's some like college level work, me trying to do you know, sci-fi pinup airbrush stuff. You know, I'm like 19, 20 years old.
For the record, I'm totally into that.
I think I drew this. I drew this in economics class in college. I found this one. It's still sitting in my studio. I found it this last week, and I was like, holy crap. But yeah, here's a very first published Chaos work. There's a Purgatory.
Nice.
And that was a cover. And that was my first work for them back in the day. And unfortunately, that was right when the industry started having more troubles and Chaos folded and stuff. But, you know, it's not like you'd hold it against them, you know? So
Chaos was my jam when I was a young lad. He got some Chastity and Purgatory. And
oh, yeah, that was the bad girl era, you know? And like anything, it sort of, you know, it ebbed and flowed. But the problem is a lot of times as a business or a publisher, it's hard to adapt if something happens in the industry and you're planning 3-4 months out for something and you're spending, you're putting all these books out, and suddenly you have a couple of bad months and you might not be able to pay the bills and you're done publishing. And it just goes, whoop, and it's just.
Imagine if they would have had Kickstarter back then.
Oh, yeah. Well, you just, circumvent. You know, and there's garbage on Kickstarter too. I mean, I've supported a few things here and there that were, you know, games, and then you get the game or whatever, and you're like, man, you are all show and no go, and it just plays like crap.
This is my Kickstarter. That so since you don't know me or know the show that well, I supported this Kickstarter.
That's what you do.
It's called I Roved Out in Search of Truth and Love, right? So the artwork on the Kickstarter were these two badass elvish bounty hunter chicks.
Okay.
So, you know, everything that appealed to me as the person I am. And I'm like, by God, I'm supporting that, right? Didn't even think twice about it. So I get the book in, and, you know, the first couple pages, you're like, holy shit, this is just epic fantasy art. You know, the art is amazing. You know, you got some Death Dealer type stuff, or maybe some Wraith from Lord of the Rings type feel there.
That's pretty badass.
Then by page 7, it turns into a complete and utter pornography. It is straight up comic book porn. I haven't made it past page 12 because I can't even, like, it is so graphic. And I don't get offended. I'm not offended by anything. And I mean, it doesn't offend me, but it's like not comfortable, you know, like you're like, holy shit. This is
like a product that you set out to enjoy. You're like, well, you had me at elves, but you didn't have to go elves and then the next level, you know?
It's beyond the next level. It's every it is completely, like, to me, it's even beyond pornography. It is explicit as explicit can get. And I'm like, good Lord, like, I can't keep this around my kids.
Right.
You know, like, this isn't safe. But there was a TJ Watson wanted to know if you did a lot of work for
boy. Send it to your boy.
All right, what was the question? You broke up there.
If you have done a lot of work for Moonstone?
So I did. I want to say there was probably 4 or 5 covers that were Kolchak the Night Stalker. And so I was doing regular covers for them. And then they just like to switch it up like a lot of publishers. And so, you know, sometimes when an artist stops working on a title, doesn't mean that they didn't like it. It's just as a publisher, you just got to keep things fresh. So I think those were the only ones from them, except the only fully illustrated, fully painted comic I ever did was from Moonstone. And it's kind of a fun story too. And I didn't grab one of those comics, but I have one. And it's called Bloodlines. And the way Bloodlines came about was my buddy and I from college, we both had just come out of art school, big comic fans. We're like, hey, let's do a comic together. And so he said, well, I'll write it, and you have a much better work ethic, so you do the art. And so I was like, okay. And I was, this was probably 93, 94. And so I worked on it for about a year, just in the evenings, off and on, just trying to kind of find a style, and started out as like ballpoint pen, and then I added a layer of pastel, and then acrylics, and then airbrush, and you know, I was searching, and I really wanted it to be for heavy metal because it was just a one shot. And it was a little bit risque, but it, you know, not quite rated R, but you know, there was kind of like a love scene in it. But it was this kind of Blade Runner meets vampire kind of storyline. And so I sent it to Heavy Metal, and much like lots of things when you're trying to get published, you didn't hear anything back. They weren't interested. They didn't publish it. So it's for 7 years, it just sat. It just went unpublished. So then I met some of the guys from Moonstone at a convention, I think Pittsburgh Comic-Con. And they said, hey, you know what, we'll have you do some covers for us. So I did some covers. We had a good relationship. And so I was talking to Dave Ulansky, and I said, hey, you know, I don't know if you guys are interested or not, but I said, I have this fully painted, full cover, one-shot comic. Are you interested in publishing it? You know, would you take a look at it? And they took a look at it and said, yeah, we'll publish it. And I said, you know, you don't have to pay me. Like, you guys publish it. You're putting up the art. I just want people to enjoy the effort that I put in, and I want it to get out there. So don't need to, you know, I didn't charge them anything because I was also hoping it would add value to the original art. And come to think of it, it's actually reprinted in the back of this book. So let me find it. It's like a blue page. So here's what the art looks like. It actually looks a little bit better in this book because it's not on newsprint. But here's the art. There's a couple pages. And the cool part is that the original pages include the text. So there was nothing that was digital. So if you buy, you know, if somebody buys an original page like this, it's everything. It's actually the whole story. It's not just missing the text, because I actually I printed the text, and then I hand ripped out every balloon and re-airbrushed it and glued it into the original art and then re-scanned it.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it was a serious labor of love. There is an absolute ridiculous amount of art in time and effort into this project. And so that's called Bloodlines. And that's the only fully illustrated Monte Moore comic story.
That's really cool too, because I can see where that fits into that whole like that heavy metal.
Yeah, it took 10 years to come to life from the time I started to the time I published. So that's just a story for the fans out there or the emerging artists. Like, hey man, never give up. You know, here on a conversation I'm having with them, I'm like, hey, would you guys like to publish my comic? It's ready to go. Don't have to pay me. And they're like, yeah. You know, and at least it got out there. And you know, it's something that I'm still proud of.
So going back just really quick, I know Pope still has a giveaway to do, but what year was that Purgatory? Someone wanted to know.
Let me look. I want to say like 01, I'm pretty sure. I will look in the book. Hey, there's that picture he was talking about. There's my little self-portrait.
Oh, yeah.
And that's from 2003. So, oh, there's Harry Potter. There's some work from the Marine Corps.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
Lots of gaming art. Hold on, I gotta find where that was. I'm sure the year is in there. Oh, there's it. I don't know. This is pretty rated R. Anyway, that's the piece that landed me the job for Playboy. That was Susie Simpson. That's the mermaid.
Damn.
And this pencil drawing won the World Fantasy Art Show in 2001 for best black and white art.
My wife says she needs that for her wall.
So this one, Purgatory, that's 2001.
What is that to the right of Purgatory? Sorry, I was like, can you go ahead and page by page?
This was a painting that I did for the Pittsburgh Comic-Con. It was about 4 feet. Then I donated to their charity auction.
Oh, awesome.
Well, I have an All About Comics charity auction coming up. Just kidding.
Yeah, this is a cool book. It showcases just a lot of my career and stuff over the years, a lot of published work.
What is the issue of Playboy that was in?
You know, I never knew which issue it ever appeared in. You could only just kind of on site.
Not all of them.
And this was never published by Chaos, but that's the very first Lady Death I ever painted back in the day.
That's freaking. That is so like. I mean, I don't know if that's 90s or not, but it looks so 90s.
It is. Yep.
That reminds me of some, like, that reminds me of some HR Geiger stuff.
Well, I'm kind of diverse. I do a lot of different looks and things. Now, there's sculpture designs, and these are all my drawings and designs turned into, 3D sculptures, and all this stuff's on the website. But, I'm just a lot more diverse than a lot of artists who do one look, one style. If you're no knock against them, it's just that's kind of typical for artists. That if you're J. Scott Campbell or Boris Vallejo or whatever, or even Alex Roth, his style, I love his work, but it hasn't evolved in 15 years. And I'm just not that guy, right? I'm always trying to do new things. That's why you see Western art behind me, Here's these pieces here.
I love your Native American art.
Those are on drum, and then so that's me painting on rawhide. That one there is buffalo hide. And, just a lot of different stuff. Here's a piece over here. This is on a skull.
Oh,
so that's open range with Costner and Duvall.
Yeah.
And that's on a Texas Longhorn skull. This piece over here, which is one of my faves, and people love this. This is Sacagawea.
Oh my God!
And that's on leather. And then real feathers attached to it.
$10,000 starting bid, free shipping.
So just different stuff, and I like the challenge, and that's just me. Not every, I don't. A lot of artists don't do that. They say, hey, this is my jam. I just want to paint, pinup girls, or I want to do comic art. That's it. Okay.
Well, I mean, just from looking at your booth, in Denver, just the pictures I saw. Of course, I wasn't there, but you have so much diversity. You kind of need the 4 booths really to kind of.
And I had a lot crammed in there, but when you have the opportunity to kind of put everything in your trailer and just drive down to the convention center as opposed to schlepping it around the country, like when I go to Motor City Con or I go to Italy, it's just a suitcase full of art, and you just show up and just, do your thing, and it's more artist alley style.
Crazy. So, what do you want to do for your giveaway there, Mr. Pope Grimy?
What do I want to do? I have no. All right. I'll do this. To win the books. What?
You're cutting out.
Oh, sorry. What is the new? What is the new Lantern Corps that just came out?
Cut out. All I heard was Lantern Corps.
What is the new? Who introduced the? What is the new Lantern Corps that just came out?
From the new Justice League book?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Is it the Red Light Lantern Corps? Because I could draw that.
I think I know the answer. Someone said Violet.
Well, Pope Cerebus actually got it because it's the ultraviolet.
Oh.
I have a question.
He answered it with a question?
You have to phrase it like Jeopardy. What is?
Oh.
Have you run into any unreasonable ultraviolets?
Oh no, he was in the middle of a question and then just answered.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So yes, it would be Pope Cerebus. Got it right. So send Pope Grimy. 2 popes in 1 room. This is way too much church.
Yeah, that's 2 popes on the line.
I think Mr. Grimy there must be going through a storm, or he froze, or he's drunk. I don't know what's going on over there.
Oh, no, I'm actually looking at my book. I'm sorry, I was like.
He's reading the comic, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, sorry guys, I forgot I was in a chat or live show. I'm gonna go ahead and read now.
No. I was showing the actual
Mark real quick to show you guys.
Now you lost our guest. He's like, see you guys, sons of bitches.
That damn asshole started reading comic books.
I don't know which microphone not really bad. I think it's Monte's.
Okay. So I mentioned earlier that we chose some art. So this is what you don't see as much today in the comic industry. That's the original illustration for the Elvira. And, you know, it's a 17 by 22 original piece of art, you know, all done by hand. And when they approved it, they said, you know, okay, go ahead. And I said, all right, when do you need the cover? And they said, tomorrow. No joke. So on like a Tuesday, and by Wednesday night, it was done. So I had a day and a half.
So that's the original art.
This is the original art. So on the back, you can even see a little bit of the, you know, part of the marker kind of shows through. And this is colored pencils, markers, and airbrushed and hand-painted acrylics.
It's crazy.
Gorgeous, man.
All of it.
You really don't see that very often from artists with the full-on. You see the pencils or you see the pencils and inks, but rarely do you see the full-on thing unless it's a commission.
The only good news is, even though I'm not a big fan of the, you know, all the digital art, to me it's just not as satisfying, and sometimes I have to do it for clients, but there's just there's no original art to sell. So the good news is the more people go digital, the more people like me are a little bit dinosaurs. But you know what? It means that when somebody says, I want to own a cover painting of Lady Death, and you kind of go, well, okay, there's a bunch of great Lady Death artists, but maybe there's only a handful that are like me or Lucio Perillo or a couple others that are doing fully painted covers. Well, now you can kind of ask a mint for them, because you're going to say, well, who else are you going to go to, right? You could buy pencils, you can buy inks, but you can't buy many color pieces because they're mostly digital. And they're gorgeous, but for the true collector, you've got to have the real deal, you know.
So I guess a perfect little segue is I assume that your commission list is booked up. Holy fuck.
No, because I don't take a lot of commissions unless I can kind of get to them in shorter order. So this is a Lady Death cover in process. Now at the moment, this is only colored pencil and some marker. And then I'll come over with airbrush and other colors, things like that. But you can actually see the texture of the pencil, especially on the side of the skull. And you can kind of see how those first layers start out. You can see every kind of stroke. So this is a Lady Death cover in progress. And I did a live feed on this a while back, so I've already had permission to kind of show the cover in process. So.
Nice. So speaking of that, so people can watch
story. Yes.
So people can watch you over on Facebook, is that right? On your art page?
Yep. And then a lot of times I'll save the videos, and sometimes I'll even turn them into, I'll bring them into editing software, and I'll speed them up, and I'll put music or a narration to it, and I'll turn like a 1 hour video into like a 3-minute segment. And then I also have a channel on YouTube called Monte Moore's Art Attack. And, you know, I've even done some videos like how to break into the business. And I would say that's probably one of my more successful ones as far as views. And, you know, it's just giving back to the community. And so people they can watch me airbrushing. They can ask me questions. Because there's very few guys. There's probably 5 guys in the whole industry that airbrush. That's it. Probably me, Brian Rude, Jerry Vanderselt, a couple others. You know, people just, they want easy. They want fast. So they use Photoshop. It takes 10 years to get good with an airbrush. No joke.
I believe it. There's some. That Lady Death just gave me give me Eiffel Tower nipples, man.
Well, on my Facebook page, if you go to photos and you go to albums, there's an album for Lady Death. And you can see every cover I've done.
That's crazy. I'm going to go ahead and check that out. That's unbelievable. So I got a couple questions for you here from the chat. One was. Have you run into any unreasonable pushback at conventions over your female pinup style art? Not unlike J. Scott Campbell got several times for depicting sexy female characters.
Yeah, it's happened.
But we know the Vampirella story, obviously. So.
Yeah, and sometimes you just get, you know, people who they just want to exert their opinion on you, and so. Without casting too many stones, usually it'll be somebody who just has a very strong feminist view, and they think that in their mind, and they're welcome to their opinion, that it's degrading to women to sexify, to objectify it, the female figure. And as you pointed out, your wife loves, beautiful art, Harley Quinn art, things like that. I think it's a misnomer today to say that, all women have a problem with, sexy art, things like that. I sell a fair amount of nice female pinup art to couples and to women who don't feel the same as somebody who comes up and goes, "Oh my gosh, you should be ashamed of yourself. You have to cover that up. The human body needs to be covered up." You want to go, really? Because I believe that if you go to the Sistine Chapel or you want to see the sculpture of David, it should be which is nude. So I don't have a problem with saying that, the human figure is dirty. It's dirty if you're raised that way and in your mindset you have a problem. So every so often you'll get a fan or somebody at a convention who, looks down your nose and they have a very superior sort of attitude, like, "Oh my, you're just trash." And like, okay, well, Playboy and many other publishers don't think so. And so do you think? I have people who pay a lot of really good money for well-drawn female art, and I've been able to carve out a pretty good niche in the industry. That doesn't mean that, the other art that I draw and that you see behind me, which, these are all male characters over here. It's not that I do it because it's a crutch and I can't draw that well, but I'm a commercial artist and that's how I pay my bills. So I try to draw and paint what I feel is going to be the most successful, sell for the most money, and make fans and people happy. So that's what it comes down to is, what is the market, bear? And I like to paint what I like to paint. So
you get more flack from like past buyers rather than like the convention people themselves, right?
The lady that I was thinking that was the one who was kind of rude and snotty to me, she was just an attendee at San Diego one year. But, the thing is, you have to remember that for every one comment like that, you get hundreds, if not thousands of people online or on social media saying, "Your work is beautiful. Your work is inspiring. I love how you depict strong, beautiful women like Wonder Woman." And I sell just as many prints to women of a really good Wonder Woman piece because they go, "You know what? She's badass. That's a great role model. Strong, fit, in control, not a, I don't do a lot of like damsel in distress kind of stuff. I'd rather draw ass kickers. And that's one of the reasons why I love Lady Death and similar characters, because they're in charge kind of characters. They're not, "Woe is me, I need help." They're more like, "Hey, step off because I will, cut you up if, you cross me." And it's like, that's a cool character.
You're taking down Lucifer, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
So back to the original question. It was a two-parter. I guess the gentleman wants to know if you've seen it get worse over the year, the pushback being worse with the, I believe the quote was, with the Marvel SJW overreaction culture.
That's kind of interesting because I read and saw a fair amount of that, especially when like the whole Milo Manara thing was going on with the, Spider Girl or whatever with her butt in the air.
Yeah.
But I think in general, it's actually more for my kind of art. I see it selling more, and sexy art is such a big part. I mean, you look at the cheesecake and the art that's popular. J. Scott Campbell has made a fantastic living, and he primarily draws female characters and that sort of thing. So I would say you have more women going to comic book shows, you have more women going to comic book stores, and there's actually a fair amount of acceptance. I'm not a believer in dumbing down or tailoring my art to this overly PC culture that really has kind of come about the last 4 or 5 years. So I don't agree with what they're doing to necessarily, I don't want to say kowtow. They can do whatever they want. They're their books. and that sort of thing. But it's just, as Austin Powers said, that's not my bag, baby.
I'm glad that you brought up that Spider Woman book, because when I heard about the controversy of that Spider Woman cover, and when I actually saw it, I was like, I've seen worse covers than that, and it was just like, I think people were more mad because that was an impossible position for a woman to be in, rather than.
The two things I remember about it, and these are going to maybe sound kind of snotty and a little bit elitist, but one, Milo Manara is a great artist. That piece actually wasn't particularly good. It was nothing amazing for him. He's a much better artist than that, in my opinion. And two, the thing that really bugged me was all of the fan artists who they told you that they were, oh, I'm going to draw it too, and I'm going to change the character, and I'm in support. What they're really saying was, look at me, I'm going to ride the coattails, and I want to be a part of this. And it just left a bad taste in my mouth because everybody was sort of treading on it, and I just thought it was kind of tacky and unprofessional of a lot of the emerging artists that I saw that were a part of the whole thing, and I just wanted to go, dude, shove off, go do your own thing and quit, trying to make people sort of look at you and, oh, I stand strong with the artist and all that. And I just was like, dude, I see right through that. It was just kind of.
It was just so weird. It was just so weird because when I finally saw this controversial picture, I was like, what are you doing? To me, it almost like they just did an eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And we're like, we'll pick this cover for this agenda,
That penny for your soul cover that you showed would have, if that had gotten a lot more traction, I'm sure it was like, well, I might get kicked out of the industry for this one, right? It is way over the top compared to Spider Girl with her button hair.
Well, that's what's weird because, Peter Parker does weird-ass bends in the air, and, nobody's saying, hey, there's no way Peter Parker could get his ball sack over his head like that,
Yeah, it was just I don't know.
Ball sack, Jason Smith. Get off my chest.
I thought it was a really super C. And there's stupid stuff that artists do too. There was some big Marvel controversy a year or so ago, and the guy hid some words and meaning, and he was a good artist, and he got his ass kicked right off of that book.
Schreiber.
That's the wrong hill to die on, right? Whether or not he shot himself in the foot, he was a good artist. I saw the art in that book, and I want to say, I think he was from India.
Yeah, it was the X-Men book, right?
Yep, yeah. And I just thought, you know what? Everybody's got their own little personal crusade, but he should have never made it public and just been like, you guys never caught it, but guess what I did? Years later, and it was like, dink. And the thing is I don't know if he's working now for, probably other independents and that sort of thing. But you know what? That's the whole don't bite the hand that feeds you. That was a stupid move. Super amateur.
That would have been.
The crazy thing was that, apparently he made that this is the book that he wrote sex in, on every other page.
Right.
But that in the Time magazine, it made one of the top 100 Marvel greats.
Oh.
I think it was 9 out of 100 or some crazy
and maybe, people say you don't have to be good as long as, it makes you famous or viral or whatever. But I don't know. It's just as a pro, and I've seen people take Randy Queen, for example. He was flavor of the day, artist. He was doing Dark Child. And then he just sort of burn out. 6 months later, you're like, dude, what are you doing? A lot of these artists, they just don't have the longevity to look far enough into the future in their career to say, wow, should I do this or not? Or is this kind of a amateur move to make? Whether or not, there's plenty of other artists who just don't have the work ethic to, stay on regular titles.
I think what you're referring to is X-Men Gold #1. The guy who put his Muslim beliefs or whatever in the
That's the one.
Yeah, he got kicked off the book right away, and people got whatever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about either the
Well,
Shriver.
Ben Skyver, he loves to talk about his little magic escapades. He does work.
And the thing is even though I don't bring any politics into my Facebook, it's open to everybody. I don't care anybody's orientation, and I keep it pretty business. But there's another part of me that applauds him for just being bold about his beliefs. I wouldn't do it. It's not my cup of tea. But to me, that's somebody who has strong belief in their character of what their beliefs, even if I don't necessarily subscribe to some of the same kinds of things. But good for him. If he wants to do that, it's his right. But it's not necessarily the smartest move for your career.
Obviously, he definitely got booted pretty quick, and that's unfortunate. But
yeah.
So, TJ Watson here in the chat. He wanted to know. He said, "Your Star Wars, Star Trek painting is amazing. You ever thought about doing movie posters?"
I've done a few projects. I've actually written 11 screenplays, and I've done a couple of projects for my own, movie stuff. So I never got to do really big-time movie posters, but I did do a pinup one for Roger Corman for his movie Attack of the 50-Foot Cheerleader. And so it's a pretty fun poster, and I actually gave Roger Corman the original art, and it hangs at his offices. And, he did such cool movies and stuff like that, all the way from the original Death Race to newer ones. And, he just discovered so many people from, Sylvester Stallone and Coppola and Spielberg. I mean, James Cameron, he pretty much helped with James Cameron. So to do a movie poster for Roger Corman was pretty badass. I've never done any big full theatrical release like big time Hollywood ones. I'm not a big believer in knocking up other people's style. I can name 10 artists who look like they're a Drew's a knockoff, and I want to go, hey, be inspired, but along the way, find your own look, because he's already got his look, so move on.
That can be said, like, yeah, I know what you mean there. As a collector, I've pissed off some people with my obvious, similar styles, right? So, like, people love J. Scott Campbell. Okay, for whatever reason, he's the most popular guy in comics, right? But if you take Paul Green from your side of things and put them next to each other, I guarantee you, one of them, I don't know who came first, probably J. Scott Campbell, 90s, but Paul Green is very similar, and the way he draws women is very similar.
It's hard for people not to be influenced by what the popular look is. So, it doesn't matter if it's Jim Lee or J. Scott Campbell or, Bolton or, somebody draws Catwoman and say, that's my jam. I want to draw more like that guy. But as a longtime professional who takes influence from Toriyama, Olivia, all the way back to Elfgren, to Rockwell, I'd rather see people find their own look and style that they can stand on and say, that's me, right? I would never want to be somebody who goes, man, you look like you're just a Frazetta knockoff. And I know a couple of guys, and they're like, I'm not a Frazetta knockoff. And you're like, dude, you got no originality. None, right? It just looks like all you ever drew was just after him. And I just don't have any respect for that artist, but that's just me.
I personally love the Perillos. The painted covers are just, they are so.
Lucho is one of the best painters in the industry. He's on his way to being, in my opinion, a modern master. He's a hell of a good guy. I've hung out with him many times at shows, and I have mad respect for the skills, because the thing is a guy like me, I'm pretty. I do a lot of photorealistic stuff, but I'm also tied sometimes to the reference that can provide. So I'm not the greatest sketch artist at conventions, and guys like Lucho, they don't even need to look at anything. He's so good and mostly self-taught that he can just be like, oh, I'm going to draw this beautiful woman as this, and it's Red Sonja. And you sit next to me at a show, and I'm like, man, you're so good. If I didn't like you, I'd hate your guts. But and those are the kind of artists that I like, because he's also humble, he's nice, and he's got math skills. So I will say that one of the biggest problems I have with the industry today is the artists that are on the other end of the spectrum, that are the emerging artists who are just doing the fan artwork. And the downside to social media is that they might get 100 or 200 likes on a piece of art, and they think, oh man, I made it. Somebody just paid me $50, $150, or I have people paying me to do sketch covers. They have a really misplaced sense of where they are in the industry, and they think they're going to get top-notch published work. And I see people go to Brian Polito all the time. Oh man, I'm ready for Lady Death covers. And you look at it and go, you're about 10 years. You're about 5 or 10 years away from being there. You're under the misplaced impression of where your skill level is, because you're not comparing yourself against the worst in the industry. The people you're competing against are seasoned professionals who have usually a decade or two. You're competing against Ebass and new artists like Colette and Sora and established artists like Lucho and everybody. That's who you're competing against, and they think they're awesome, and they're like, you're like this far above a high school level artist, but you're making some money, so you're excited.
That's interesting. So,
sorry for the diatribe, but that's how I feel.
no, it's totally fine. I appreciate the realism of everything, because that's how I am. I live my life as a realist. Like, if I were an artist, which I'm not, but that conversation would mean a lot to me, because I'm like, okay, fair enough. At least I know where I stand or where I'm at.
And I don't want to be a jerk online. I see a lot of groups and stuff that I belong to, and I kind of feel like I would give some constructive criticism if I think they're willing to do it. But when people are just blowing accolades at people, for the most part, I just kind of keep my mouth shut, and I kind of go, there's another one. And, you see it in Artist Alley, or they're ripping off somebody else's style, and I just go, you're headed in the wrong direction, right? Because they're not staying grounded. They don't really, I don't want to say you don't have to pay your dues, because there's a lot of artists I see that are paying their dues, grinding it out, they're getting better, and they're getting that first published work, and those are the ones that I'm proud of. But I see other ones that are just kind of skewed, right? And they have a big ego. They're like, oh man, check out my stuff. I'm rocking eBay. Here's my links, all this. And I kind of go, no, and they wonder sometimes why their Kickstarter fails or whatever. And you just kind of go, you got the mistaken impression of how much money people were willing to spend on your artwork. You haven't paid your dues, and you don't have the skills yet. I mean, you might support a Kickstarter from somebody who you say, I want to give them a leg up. I'm going to give them some money and help them out. They're publishing their first book. But you can also choose to spend that $20 on a book from me, supporting a Colette or Sora or any number of other artists, and say, well, what am I going to do with that $20? You got great choices as a collector.
Well, that's why I've really got into the Kickstarter thing, is because it gives me an opportunity to support a publisher, support a book, support an artist that I believe in or that I collect, and to get a rare book by that particular artist that not everyone's going to have, because you can start. I mean, you kind of watch the trend, like going back to Perillo, his stuff has just climbed, and now he's doing so much published work. Like just tons of stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I love to see the success of guys like that who are earning it, and he's churning it out. But he has a background in fine art. He lives in Florence, and he'll go to the museums and things like that. But he's able to bring what he's learning into the world of comics and fantasy and stuff. And so, trust me, when there's guys like me who wish I could paint like him, I'm like, man, he inspires me. It makes me want to be a better artist.
He's something. But there's a couple questions here that I missed. So one question was, when you're working on a piece, but suddenly you have other ideas that come to mind, you just kind of like jot them down? Do you just kind of mentally put them back for later?
Yes, I mean, sometimes I take notes on my big art board, if I have an idea for even a story or a piece of art, and I, keep a lot of notes and stuff. But, you know, if you're working on something that the client has already approved, you know, there's not a lot of room to deviate. Don't just suddenly show up and say, oh, by the way, I put a bunny over here with a chainsaw because I thought it was cool. They'd be like, what the hell, dude? This wasn't part of the sketch. And you're like, yeah, but I thought it was cool. And it's like, okay, that's why Photoshop was invented. You got to take that out. So as a professional, I stay, you know, pretty true to what the original vision was. But it is nice if I'm working on something like for the cover to my own book where I'm making all the decisions as I go. You know, do I want that background purple? Do I want it blue? Do I want it gray? And unfortunately, well, not fortunately, but I kind of make up stuff as I go along. And some people, they'll say, this turned out exactly like I envisioned it. And they're trying to bring something out of their head and make it happen. And I'm actually not that guy. I don't know what it's going to look like when it's done. And I literally am making it up as I go. Once I have like a sketch or whatever, I'm making decisions every 30 seconds, every 2 minutes. Oh, do I like this? Do I like that? Do I want to add this? Do I want to make that? So my pieces usually, if they're for me, they evolve a lot while I'm working.
Cool.
Then let's try and catch up here. So, Pope Cerebus, who asked you those questions earlier about the kind of the pushback, he just said, keep art free from censorship. Thank you for your answer.
Well, the thing is people could buy whatever products they want, whether it's a Playboy print or whether it's a comic. You just choose to support what you love. And, you know, actually, I have a real quick story about that. So, hey, look, Sam Adams, Boston Lager. Okay, so this book was going to be printed, not published, but printed by another printer. And they also print yearbooks, high school yearbooks. And literally days before going to print, I got a text message from the rep saying, yeah, we can't print your book. You have nudity in it. You have some topless, you know, comics characters. And because we have tours coming through our plan, we can't print your book anymore. And I said, whoa. You guys came to me. You wanted my business, and you already printed 2 or 3 other books that I've been in that had really tasteful nudity. They were on mythology and stuff like that. And you guys wanted my business. And they said, yeah, well, we had a tour come through, and people got all up in arms because the mythology book had, you know, topless characters in it. So now we're not doing that anymore. And I was like, you guys might just get sued over this. And I was pissed. So now at late in the game, this was a Kickstarter book, by the way, I had to go find a new printer. And I published something on Facebook about, hey, I'm sorry, this is going to push back the release 2 or 3 weeks. I've got to go find a new printer. And Taylor Publishing won't print it. And I was blown away because the next day I got an email that was from Chuck Rosansky, owner of Mile High Comics, one of the most powerful and influential people in comics. And he wrote an email and copied me on it because he saw it on Facebook, and he said, let me tell you, one of my biggest pet peeves is censorship, and Monty is one of the more influential, you know, painters and multi-genre and all this sort of stuff. And he said, I will bring to bear legal means against you and the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, and we will fight. And if you choose to censor him, you are going to have a fight on your hands of epic proportions. And I was like, holy crap. Like, suddenly I have Chuck in my corner and stand up for me, and, you know, is a big believer in freedom of speech and art not being censored. And, you know, I came back to him and said, you know what? I don't want them to print my book now, so I'm not going to fight for them to print the book. And so they recommended another printer, and they had to stroke a check for $2,000 for the difference of the other company to print my book out of their pocket, because the president of the company said, whatever it costs to print, we'll pay the difference between what we were going to charge.
Wow.
So it didn't cost me any more, and I actually ended up with a nicer book because I actually did, you can see where the gloss part is here. So that's kind of a knockout. It's called spot varnish. It's what you see on like the J. Scott Campbell books. And so I actually got a nicer product because of it. But there's a censorship story for it.
So I always found Chuck very interesting. So when I would say 2000s, maybe, when the Comic Book Buyer's Guide was like a little monthly magazine with
he had an article back. regular call.
I always bought it to read his story. Like I found him, his whole story with comics is fascinating in itself.
And the problem is that a lot of people, what I found, and I had not met him, even though I'm from Denver, I met him on an airplane on the way to Pittsburgh, and he and Rowan, his daughter, were there, and I became friends with them. And there was just so many stories, and people thought so much about him because he was successful that he must be, you know, a ruthless jerkwad and all this kind of thing. Let me tell you, he gives more back to the community. He does fundraising for the homeless. He is one of the most down-to-earth guy. He wears Chuck Taylor, Converse. You know, he dresses the way he wants. He's outspoken. He fights for what he enjoys. And there were so many stories I had heard about him, and they were all BS.
His big warehouse is like my mecca. So eventually, I will make it out there.
I'll say the Mecca. I was like, someday I'm gonna go to that big fucking warehouse, and I'm gonna spend.
World's largest comic book store right here in Denver, and it's like you know, 3 to 5 million comics in those two warehouses. 10 million total, I think, 8 or 10 million.
I think next year at Denver Comic Con will be my my trek. Instead of Seattle, I'll postpone and go to Denver.
You go in there by yourself.
Well, then you get to go to Mile High, and what they did this year is rather than doing a massive booth, they just ran a free shuttle service. They did 2 booths, and I put a flyer at my booth, and they just ran free shuttles all day long. So you could go to the show, you could just step outside, you could pick up a shuttle, and they'd take you right to the superstore. It was genius.
That is genius.
Carson might not have
Go to the convention. I want to go to their warehouse and just like go through every like whatever box.
Well, the superstore is one of the warehouses. It's got a store in the front main part, and then it's just walls and walls of boxes.
I saw the video that Kevin Smith had made when he went there to visit, and he filmed like the whole damn thing, and it was just, it's so epic. Like it's definitely like it's a week adventure, right? Yeah, it's gonna take me a week to get through that store.
Yeah, bring your checkbook.
Oh, my wife says no. So,
Tell the wife who shall not be named to stay out of our biz.
you don't know,
Okay,
wife.
we're gonna do a live show at that fucking place.
After she got
on the floor.
the 2 weeks ago, she was stranded at the Denver airport, so she's not loving Denver right now.
Well, it happens. You know, I've been stranded in a number of airports before.
Denver airport is rough though, for real. It's a tough one to navigate if you don't know what you're doing.
Only my second time flying, so that's.
Yeah, it was only her second time flying, and she got stuck there, so she's a little bitter.
Gas airport too.
So Pope Cerebus says, do you think that putting out more work, tons of covers, degrades the quality of some of popular artists?
It's a good question. It's also a fine line of, you know, are you overexposed, right? So say somebody is putting out, oh, I do 3, 4, 5 covers a month. You know, they're doing it for the money, and if they're fast enough or whatever. But there is something to be said for making it a little more collectible. Now, because I did the big fine art show in Arizona, which was 3 months, and then I had a bunch of work when I got back, this cover that I'm working on now is my first Lady Death cover in 6 months. But I had already done a couple of covers that Ryan had in the queue that he can release as he sees fit. So you do have to look at, you know, what book you're on is a good for you, or you get too overexposed. Because for me, I look at, you know, my bread and butter is selling the original art. So the thing is if I keep the quality high and there's not too many of them, I can ask more for that original art because there's not 20 of them a year. There's 5 or 10 a year. And people are, you know, hey, how do I get one of those? Right? But at $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to buy, you know, an original, really nice kick-ass painted cover, it also shortens the pool of who's willing to step up and say, yeah, you know, I'm going to put myself on the ramen budget, or I'm going to, you know, make payments of $300 or $500 a month on a cover, you know, for 6 months, so they can own something like that because it's a grail piece and it's important to them. So.
Let's see here. TJ Watson wants to know, did you design the furniture and dragon light on your Facebook?
Yes. So there's if you go to, well, my Facebook page or even mavarts.com or Maverick Arts, under the store, you'll see sculptures. And I've designed over 80 to 100 resin sculptures that are mostly like gothic and dark fantasy. and all those drawings are done by hand. And then the company that licenses the work that's overseas, they bring them to life.
So if people wanted to go right now to purchase some of your work, would Mav Art be the place to go?
Yeah, so there's, I would say, the two main places for the sort of pop culture industry, everything that's comics, games, pinup girls, all that is Maverick Arts, or Mav Arts for short, is my main commercial site. The reason why the Western art is on a different site is just so that if I'm at shows and I want fans just to go to kind of the higher end, more expensive, and it's only Western and fine art, that's called the Art of Monte Moore. And so anybody who's interested in this kind of stuff behind me and they like that kind of thing, the Art of Monte Moore is just a separate, much smaller website, just focused on the Western and a little bit of wildlife. And so those are kind of the two main ones. And then I sell a fair amount of art, honestly, direct on Facebook. Most of the sketches, if I have stuff available, I post it on Facebook and it all sells. I don't even need to put it on eBay for the most part. Just if I ask a reasonable price for it, somebody will message me and say, I got to have that. That's going to make my life better.
I don't know if I got this question earlier, but someone had asked if you did any superhero art. I mean, I know we talked about DC briefly with the Harley and Batman, but any other superhero art that you've worked on or covers you've worked on?
You know, I've done licensed artwork for both Marvel and DC, and strangely enough, I just got approval today, and I've literally been waiting for, I think, a year and a half or 2 years to show some of the trading cards from this Marvel sketch series that I did like 2 years ago. I don't know what the hang-up was, but just today they said, oh, by the way, you can finally show that art. And then I did work on the DC Versus card game. You guys remember the Versus card game? VS, looks like Versus.
Yeah.
So I worked on that, and I worked on the Green Lantern Superman set. And so I did 10 paintings for them. The originals are all sold. And the originals were maybe only like 8 by 10. And there was 2 or 3 Superman, and there was Sinestro, and there was Kyle Rayner, there was Hal Jordan. There was a really kick-ass one of Jade. She had just like wiped out the whole Green Lantern Corps. So I do fan art. I do commissions. One of the favorite paintings I ever painted was really a fan art portfolio piece for me for Man of Steel. And it was a 4-foot painting called Kryptonians. And I just sold it this last year to a friend of mine who actually owns that Star Wars, Star Trek painting that the guy was referencing earlier. So he owns a couple of real epic pieces of mine. And those are big paintings that have over 100 hours in them. So I love all the classic superheroes, but I've never gotten to do mainstream covers for, say, Batman or GL or, a lot of other titles, which I would love to do. It hasn't been in the cards yet, and I don't have the connections to maybe always make that happen. Or maybe I'm just not trying hard enough.
Well, if you're making a good enough living doing what you love, it doesn't really matter, really.
Yeah, I'll be honest. When I decided at 16 to become an artist, I said I'm going to do whatever it takes to not be a starving artist. And so I don't have any complaints. I think the skill level's gotten to the point where I sell enough art, I create the art people like, and I make a good living at it. So I'm one of those really happy, and I don't want to say lucky guys, because it's not luck. You got to go out and earn it. You got to grind it out.
You put the work into it.
Yeah, and it really is 70 hours a week. I mean, I'll probably work until 2 o'clock this morning on a Magnificent 7 painting that I'm working on. And it's for a company that's going to do a re-release of the movie poster. And so they had seen the drawing here in the background. That one up there, the drawing up there on the right. And said, hey, can you do a painting along those lines for us? So I'm always busy. I'm always booked 2 or 3 months in advance. And, I choose to go to the shows that I want to go to. And, I'm just out there earning it. And you can never take it for granted. I tell people you never, in my opinion, you should never feel like you made it. right? I had a young guy come to me, he's a Colorado artist, and he said, you know, how do you know when you made it? I'm working so hard. And I said, you know what? You got the wrong attitude. I said, making it isn't a destination. It's just part of the journey, right? I'm 25 years into it. And really only the last year do I feel like things are humming. It took 25 years to feel that way. And it doesn't mean you suddenly slow down or you take a step back. You actually have to keep that pace and that work ethic going, because you've seen how good all the artists are who are the emerging artists. They're up and coming. They'd love to have my job and do Lady Death covers and, you know, do different projects. So you gotta in your mindset, you have to basically say, I gotta stay hungry. I gotta just stay at this level and whatever's beyond, because one of the things I will tell people, I'm not the artist that I want to be. I'm not as good as I hope that someday I will be. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm not satisfied with where my skills are. And so I just always, you know, I'm trying new stuff. I took a 4-day watercolor workshop from a master watercolorist who's a wildlife guy, like Audubon Society, badass, Mort Sahlberg. And I learned so much from him in 4 days. And I think people were shocked. They're like, wait a minute, you could teach classes. Why are you taking classes? I said, because I'm a student. Look how much I learned. If you see the Green Lantern artwork and the Xena artwork I did for Motor City Con, that look, which is a real watercolor look, is a direct result of this workshop. And they look very different than my airbrush paintings.
I'll have to check it out. Motor City Con?
Yeah, it was the VI preprint for Arrow and Xena, and they're real kind of splashy, kind of loose, watercolory, like still illustrative, not like Bill Sienkiewicz, like, you know,
sure,
kind of off the hook, kind of a little more controlled, but
he's an interesting guy.
oh yeah, for sure. And some of his stuff's tight, and some of it I can't tell what he's drawing. So
here.
Anyway, I probably need to wrap up soon because I need to kind of get back on the work schedule here. So why don't we give away one of the hardcovers, and I will sign it, and so you guys come up with a question or a trivia or something, and we'll give it away, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, I have one more question, then we'll kind of wrap it up here. Then we'll do your giveaway. Question?
My son wants to be a comic book writer and artist. He's 11. What's my number one advice?
So this Tacoma Comics says, my son wants to be a comic book creator, writer, artist. He's 11. What's one piece of advice you would give him?
So you know, it's a dream of a lot of people to be, you know, to work in comics. Let me tell you, you know, it can be very cool and it's a ton of hard work, but I will say there's only one thing you have to be successful. Only one. And it's dedication. Relentless, unwavering, single focus, because with dedication, you will get the skills, right? So I'm sure as an 11-year-old, he might be at the process of where I was when I was 11. You saw the artwork, you know, I showed when I was kind of 13 or whatever. This is a far cry from what I'm doing today. And the reason is that's learned in progression and skill. I went to school, I got a degree in art, I paid for my own college, you know, I grounded out myself. But I think if you have that focus that says, I'm not going to let anything derail me, this is what's going to make me happy, and I will get the skills, whether as a writer, as a creator, as an artist, to be successful. And the thing is there's a lot of people with natural talent who don't have the dedication. So they end up being just, I don't want to say a failure, but they just don't make it to where they want to be. And one of my favorite quotes of all time is from Mark Twain. He said, there's nothing so common as a man with wasted talent. Like, if you want to be here and talent will take you here, guess what? This big gap in here, that's called learned and applied skills. That's called hours of practice. That's called figure drawing sessions, learning from books, watching YouTube videos, getting the skills. You can't you can't buy ability, right? It's one of those things you can't buy. You have to go work it and earn it if you don't have talent. I'm pretty talentless. I don't have any talent. What I have is a massive reservoir of dedication and perseverance and a little bit of creativity. And when I hammer and I take, okay, I got some creativity and I got this drive over here that's like light speed, that was the ingredients for me to help me, I don't want to say be successful, but to help me on my career path. And so that's what they need. You just have to say, I will support you, whatever it takes. And the thing is maybe if he's 15 and he finds girls or sports or hot rods or building cars or racing motorcycles, maybe that'll change. You don't know. But for me, it never changed. I said, this is what I want to do, and it's going to make me happy. And so I never veered from that.
And honestly, that's
a little Tacoma.
And I mean that kind of goes with no matter what you want to be in life. That kind of is an all-encompassing, you know.
It doesn't matter whether you want to be a chef or president of the United States. You just say, that's my focus, and you just don't let yourself derailed. And, you know, people can, I don't want to say derailed. There's choices in life. And whether that means having a family, whether that means going into the military, whether that, you know, people get into drugs, alcohol, comics, they're all addictions. You know, those can be things that are distracting. And I know many illustrators, wannabe artists, they have a very hard time juggling raising a family because we're these Batman night owls with a deadline. And you go, hey, guess what? You need to take, you know, Francine to soccer practice, and we've got, you know, all weekend baseball tournaments. And you're like, well, I got a deadline. Like, I need to change the whole program. Somebody said, would you do a Lady Death cover? I need it by Monday. Those are hard decisions that people have to make. And that's just part of the job.
Yeah, I was supposed to be the right winger for the Detroit Red Wings, but then I decided I liked beer.
That happens.
Dedication to beer.
Now I sit and watch. But I'm drinking while I watch.
So we're gonna give away your art book money.
Okay, yep.
I'm going to do this thing the old-fashioned way. I want you guys in the chat to pick a number between 1 and 13. I already have my number selected. The first person to get the number I selected will win the beautiful art book by Monte Moore.
There's the little Helena cover on the back. That was the first published freelance cover.
John the Doctor, no. Yes. So close.
I won. Just give it to me.
Yeah.
I feel like Vanna White.
You guys are so close.
Yes.
So close.
Hey, look, Lord.
1 to 13, guys. Come on. Someone pick the number.
27.
Tacoma Comics, you're the winner. Number 3, right here.
Ooh, there's some.
Number 3. Tacoma Comics nailed it.
Crimson Tales covers right there.
You know, this is kind of perfect because his son is the one who asked the question. He wins the art book, and perfect for inspiration. So
awesome.
So Tacoma, you just hit me up with you PM me your address and stuff, and we'll take care of the rest. I want to appreciate you for being on with us tonight. I mean, it's truly an honor. Your artwork's amazing. The Western stuff, it just fills to my heart. Your Lady Death is, I can't wait to get my Denver exclusive in the mail. So I didn't have to give it away.
Because, you know, a lot of time, even when I go live on Facebook, people can ask me questions, but there's not the kind of back and forth. So it's really just kind of more like art questions. But I just really appreciated the interaction of, you know, kind of talking about the history of the career and being able to, you know, either give some insight or maybe some inspiration to young artists out there. And, you know, share the good and the bad about the industry. So it's kind of fun for me because it's a rare opportunity. And oftentimes being an artist is very solitary. And so it is nice to be able to interact with fans and collectors. So I appreciate being asked on as well.
I mean, this is so cool, man. Like, I'm a huge lover of, like, spaghetti westerns. Like, I love, like, you know, the whole series with Blondie. Good, the Bad, and Ugly is my absolute favorite.
There's Once Upon a Time in the West right there, a little one. 2 Horses Too Many.
Oh, that's beautiful. But I mean, like,
And then
like,
you have some more up there. You got cool Western art kind of surrounding here.
it's beautiful.
This is a very different piece, and so this is an Arabian portrait that's all in oils, and that was painted live at the art show down in Arizona.
The detail is crazy.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, it's nice to be able to do different stuff. So it's kind of funny. So like this piece here, which is a Native American portrait, and that's all in pencil. And yet if you come down over here, there's a piece that I did for Barrett Jackson. And so a little piece of garage art, and that was an illustration. That was for Barrett. So kind of fun stuff. So, all right. Well, I think I am going to sign off, and we'll get some goodies in the mail for everybody. So thanks for everybody around the world for joining in.
Yeah, thank you so much. So
Thank
you guys have a great night. Be safe. Hit up Monty's websites. I'll put them in the description. I've already put them in the chat tonight. So
now, other people go back if we put it on Facebook? Can they watch the whole thing even though it's not live? Okay.
Yep, it's all recorded. Once it posts after this, it'll all be on there.
Right on. All right.
Well, you have a great night, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Signing out from Colorado. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
All right. So, yeah, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I don't know if you want to go around Pope and do your tour.
My tour. I just want to say thank you guys for watching us. Once again, thank you, Monty. You were an awesome guest. You gave a lot of great insight. My boys hit 500. I just hit 200 subs, so I'm guessing we're going to be having contests pretty soon. But I'd also like to say, Pope C, text me your address so I can give you some shit. But thank you guys for watching. Man, I love this community to death.
Who was it?
Comics Miss.
Uh-oh. Comics Miss Explained has asked for the after party.
Oh, I do have to say one more thing. Tacoma called us out saying, like, you guys sound too coherent.
I'm not, trust me. I've had 3 beers, man. It's I'm like a 3-beer limit before I'm passing on the floor. Yeah, so I'll post a link in the chat. We'll have a little bit of an after party if anyone wants to join. So give me a few minutes to my bearings.
After party. Dude, I have to say that intro was killer. I felt it deep down inside.
What's that?
That intro, I was just like,
oh, do you like my intro? Yeah, what do you guys think of the intro tonight? I guess I didn't ask for feedback, but I felt pretty fucking awesome.
I thought it was fucking awesome.
Did it work good? Did it sound good? No? No one's listening to me?
That's it. Everybody, they signed off. They were like,
everyone with us? That's okay. Intro was so good. All right, sweet. We got one.
No, Dom said badass intro.
Intro was so good.
So good. So good.
Oh,
So
did you
good.
see
What?
Someone never answered something.
Oh, you never answered why you posted Master of the Universe. Oh, dude. So I am a Stefan Sajic collector, hands in hand, and I was on CBSI or something, and people were talking about this book going crazy. And I'm like, what the fuck? So I looked it up. A beautiful book. So I posted on Instagram chat. I'm going to be going off air, but if anyone wants to join the party, there it is, mofos. So you guys can join us, love us, or hate us, but you'll never leave us.
Hate me, love me, but you're going to stay forever. Forever.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. We'll do.
Oh, shit. You're going to pull up a chair?
Yeah, the wife's going to join the after party.
Oh, shit. You guys
So-
are going to get some special shit on the after show.
Actual shit on the after show. So yeah, so that's what's up with the Masters of the Universe 18. I apologize I missed it earlier, but for me, I just want to make this show all about Monte Moore. You guys check out his page, check out his mavart.com. Amazing talent. I wish I had the DenverCon exclusive Lady Death to show you guys tonight, but I will have it next week. It's got shipped out today from Canada. Beautiful cover. Dude's got some great shit. His American, Indian, and cowboy art is
I like
unbelievable.
that motherfucker was acting like he's like, man, I'm still trying to get to a better talent. I was like, dude, like, look at your wall. Like, your shit is fucking 100% already.
But that's
like,
what keeps those talents going. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just like, you know, you take sports people. They don't take a day off. MJ didn't be like, well, I'm fucking MJ. I guess I'm good tonight. You know, so he's a super talented artist, and
once he got this on the fucking Nike, he was done.
Yeah. But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and sign off tonight. Thank you guys so much for coming out. You want to join the after party? Link is in the chat. Hit us up. We'll come talk to you for a little bit.
Yeah,
don't expect us to keep our clothes on. So
yeah, don't expect that.
You guys all have a great night. We'll see you next Thursday.
And maybe some shark titties.
I got some dolphin tits. Don't forget Friday night, tomorrow night, you got reviews from the Batcave. You got the Comic Corp. I'll probably be there. I believe it's going to be swap meet night. Hoping that my brother Pope will be there as well. If not, it's okay. I understand. Life goes on. And otherwise, we'll see you guys later. Thank you so much. And love you all. Bye-bye.